who decide what counts as truly green? It's not just vibes or marketing, it's a set of formal rulebooks called Sustainable Finance Taxonomies. They guide billions in investment, determine which projects scale, and quietly shapes energy transition you're living and working. Today, I've decoded the EU Taxonomy, the Asian Taxonomy, and Singapore's Singapore-Asia Taxonomy, and show how they affect engineering, finance, and your career. EU Taxonomy is the EU's classification system for the environmentally sustainable activities, and it directs capital and combats greenwashing. Alright, so what is greenwashing? Greenwashing used to be easy, like slap a leaf on the label and call it sustainable. Investors and regulators need a common science-based language to define what really aligns with the net zero by 2050 trajectory and other environmental goals. That's why the EU created the EU Taxonomy, a cornerstone of its sustainable finance framework to channel capital to activities that deliver a genuine climate impact and reduce market fragmentation and greenwashing. It's not a list of stock to buy. It's a criteria system for what counts as environmentally sustainable across sectors. In parallel, regions built their own frameworks. Asians needed a taxonomy that reflects diverse economic stages, from emerging to advanced economies, while staying interoperable with global standards. Its multi-tier design offers both a principles-based foundation framework and a detailed plus standard with technical screening criteria. This allows credible transition pathways across sectors like energy, manufacturing, transport, ICT, and more. While Singapore went further by pioneering the world's first multi-sector transition category in its Singapore-Asia Taxonomy. Why? Because Asia's decarbonization must happen alongside economic development and rising energy demand, meaning we need a way to finance activities that aren't green today but are moving credibly toward net zero. The taxonomy uses a traffic light system. Green, amber, it's like the transition stage, and ineligible, and sets sunset dates, so transition thresholds don't last forever. The EU taxonomy defines when an economic activity is environmentally sustainable using technical screening criteria. Do no significant harms safeguards across 6 environmental objectives and minimum social safeguards. The aim is clarify, give companies and investors a common yardstick to assess alignment with EU's climate and environmental goals. It's also evolving to be more usable. In January 2026, the EU introduced simplification amendments, streamlined reporting templates, and explicit materiality threshold for small exposure activities, and consolidated that reduced data points dramatically, all to make disclosures more decision useful without diluting ambition. While for engineers and operators, what matters is technical screening criteria, emissions intensity threshold, life cycle perspective, and DNSH checks. For finance teams, it's how these criteria flows into CapEx and OpEx alignment, and how they intersect with CSRD or ESRS disclosures. The upshot: if you want funding labeled green in Europe, your project design, supply chain, and data must pass taxonomy's tests. So the EU taxonomy sets a high bar that drives technology choices, higher efficiency processes, electrification, renewable integration, CCUS were appropriate, robust environmental safeguards, all backed by consistent reporting. While the Asian taxonomy is designed for interoperability and inclusivity, its foundation framework keeps the principles based on ramp, while the Plus standard offers technical screening criteria with sector coverage now completed in version 4 by November 2025 across 6 focus and 3 enabling sectors. It references global taxonomies, often aligning the green tier with frameworks like the EU, and introduces amber tiers that provide progressive pathways toward green with sunset provisions. This acknowledges Asian development diversity while keeping ambition science-based. While Singapore's Singapore Asia Taxonomy takes the transition idea from principle to practice, launched in December 2023. It sets a threshold for green and transition activities across 8 focus sectors, and is the first multi-sector taxonomy to formally embed a transition category. In 2025, Singapore released the practical guidance to improve implementation, how to handle data gaps, interim thresholds, sunset dates, grandfathering, and how to assess entity-level transition plans. It even differentiates amber versus amber measures, so financiers can fund decarbonization measures that move assets towards green. This is crucial for harder-to-abate sectors and legacy infrastructure, heat electrification, fuel switching, efficiency retrofits, methane abatement, and CCUS. The guidance recognizes real-world constraints. For instance, when the CCUS stands for like carbon capture storage or carbon capture utilization storage, isn't commercially deployable at scale yet, and explain how credible transition financing can still reference the taxonomy without full alignment, provided the pathway robust. Okay, so Asia and Singapore show how to finance the gray to green journey responsibly, setting time-bound transition criteria, ensuring transparency, and avoiding transition washing while keeping criteria flowing to real emission cuts. While taxonomies don't replace engineering, they steer it. They influence which power plants get built, which industrial retrofits get financed, and which negative emissions options scale. In Europe, strict criteria and the DNSH push projects towards high efficiency, renewable storage, and clean molecules, with structured reporting under the taxonomy and related disclosure regime. In Asia, tiered pathways allow credible transitions while economics grow. In Singapore, transition finance rules translate into bankable term sheets for upgrades that cuts emissions now and move asset into 1.5 degrees Celsius aligned paths. Consider negative emission technologies like BCCS and DACCS. Many net zero scenarios rely on carbon removals to balance residual emissions in hard-to-abate sectors. Regional taxonomies increasingly grapple with how and when to classify these. Singapore's framework explicitly references CCUS within sector criteria and transition measures, while Asia's Plus standard extends TSC across sectors that could enable removals or large abatement. Expect the criteria for removals and long-duration storage integrity to become more granular over time, aligning with life cycle and DNSH expectations. Policy also interact with reporting practicality. The EU's 2026 simplification reduces data points, introduces materiality thresholds, and harmonized templates. This boosts comparability while keeping the focus on decision useful information, crucial for leaders, insurers, and infrastructure investors deciding which decarbonization project deserve capital. So think of taxonomies as capital compasses. They point money toward activities that reduce emission now, safeguard ecosystems, and align with net zero later, which with checkpoints and transparency built in. Okay, so why students or young engineers should care about it? So if you're engineering, energy engineering, or climate tech, influencing in taxonomies is a career multiplier. You'll read technical screening criteria, translate them into design specs, and help clients or employers secure green transition financing. In utilities, you'll connect planned upgrades to taxonomy alignment. In industry, you'll build CapEx roadmaps that meet thresholds. In consulting or finance, you'll evaluate alignment, DNSH, and credible transition plans. Beyond jobs, this is content gold. Most people don't know how money decides which technologies win. Explain EU's science-based bar, Asia's inclusive tires, and Singapore's transition logic with real project examples, and you will stand out on LinkedIn or YouTube or in the interview. You're not just thinking about climate, you're explaining the operating system of the transition. So the energy transition isn't a single switch, it's a system build. Taxonomies are the rulebooks ensuring we build it right. Okay, so let's move on for our recap. We introduce EU Taxonomy, which is a science-based criteria to align capital with the Green Deal and prevent greenwashing. Also, we mention Asian Taxonomy. It's inclusive, interoperable, with foundation framework and plus standard and amber pathways to green, which for complete sector technical screening criteria. As for the Singapore Asia Taxonomy, it's first to embed a transition category across 8 sectors, with 2025 guidance to solve real-world implementation issues. If this helped you see how finance steers technology, like, subscribe, and comment with the sector you want me to break down next. Maybe power, steel, cement, or data centers.